Hello everyone. Now let's continue with the chapter of demand and recoveries. An interesting chapter. And next we'll see section 76. That is tax collected but not paid to the government. Now in the last two sections that we have seen, 73 and 74, it was recovery of tax that you haven't paid. Okay? But this section deals with a case where you collect tax from the customer, that is from the recipient, which is over and above the tax which is levied by the government. So if the tax rate is say 9%, you recover 18% from your customer and you pay 9% to the government. So as far as the tax payable is concerned, you have paid it in full. You have paid the tax in full. So 73 and 74 doesn't arise. Because tax is 9%, you have paid 9% to the government. So government is happy. But you have collected at 18% from the customer, from the recipient. So what about that difference of 9%? Will you keep it in your pocket? Means you become Government of India, you have the power to levy and collect GST from customers and keep it in your pocket? No, that's not possible. है ना? So how that tax is to be paid and where will it go? Let's see. Section 76. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in any order, direction or of direction of the appellate authority, appellate tribunal, court or in any other provision of this act or the rules made thereunder, under any other law for the time in force. So this section overrides everything. It overrides not just the other sections of this act, but it also overrides the court judgments, the judgments of tribunal, the judgments of appellate authority. This section overrides everything. Every person who has collected from any other person any amount as representing the tax under this act, means you collect from any person any amount in the name of GST. See GST, similar section will be there in SGST, similar in IGST. So basically any kind of GST. So if you collect from any person anything in the name of GST and has not paid the said amount to the government, you have collected it and you have not paid it to the government, shall forthwith means immediately pay the said amount to the government, irrespective of whether the supplies in respect of which such amount was collected are taxable or not. So sometime it may also happen that your supplies are not taxable, but you have added GST. How will the customer know? How will the customer know that my supply is not taxable? He doesn't know. So I apply GST, I recover it from the person, but then I don't pay to government. When the government asks me about the tax, I say my supplies are not taxable, so I am not liable to pay tax. But then I have collected the amount from the customer in the name of GST. I have to deposit that amount also to the government. Okay. So all these amounts that you have collected from customer in the name of GST have to be deposited with the government, whether your supplies are taxable or not. Now if you don't pay, this is voluntary payment. Subsection 1 says you have to voluntarily pay immediately to the government, but if you don't pay, then what? So let's see. Where the amount is required to be paid to the government under subsection 1 and which has not been so paid, the officer may serve on the person liable to pay such amount a notice, that is again the show cause notice, requiring him to show cause as to why the said amount as specified in the notice, the amount has to be specified in the notice, should not be paid by him to the government, and why a penalty equivalent to the amount specified, that is 100% penalty, specified in the notice should not be imposed on him under the provisions of the act. Show cause, show the reason why you should not pay the amount and why you should not pay the penalty equal to 100% of the tax that you have collected and not paid. The proper officer shall, after considering the representation, if any, made by the person on whom the notice is served, then the person will reply. He will reply that, look, this is not GST, though the short form is GST, but actually it is some other kind of money that I am collecting from the customer. It is something like good and simple total or something. You satisfy the officer that the amount that I have collected from my customer is not the tax. It is not the tax under this act. It is some other amount. If you satisfy that, then fine. But if it is found that no, it was tax only, you have collected it in the name of tax only, then you will have to deposit the amount. So he'll pass an order then, and you'll have to deposit the amount along with penalty. So that is given there. So after considering the representation, if any, made by the person on whom the notice is served, determine the amount due from such person, and thereupon such person shall pay the amount so determined. This person may be a registered person, this person may not be a registered person. The supply may be taxable, the supply may not be taxable. So this section has nothing to do with GST imposable under the act. It only says that if you collect any amount from your customers in the name of GST, you have to deposit it to the government. Then the person referred to under subsection 1 shall, in addition to paying the amount referred to under 1 or 3, also be liable to pay interest. So you will be liable to pay tax which you have collected, penalty also, and interest also, at the rate specified under section 50, that is 18% per annum, from the date such amount was collected, by him to the date such amount is paid by him to the government. So here this is what we can say, this is an amount that you have collected, but this is not actually the tax amount now. So we will not see the due date of payment of tax. Normally, if you make a delay in payment of GST, the interest starts after the due date of payment, right? But in this case, it will start right from the day when you collected that amount from your customer. When you collected the amount from customer, from that day till the day when you deposit it with the government. Okay, collected, underline. Collected to paid to the government. Then opportunity of hearing shall be granted where a request is received in writing from the person to whom the notice was issued to show cause. Obviously, opportunity of hearing will be given if he requests for it. Then the officer shall issue an order within 1 year from the date of issue of the notice. 1 year from issue of notice. But the important point, there is one point which is missing in this section. Have you noted that point? What is the time limit for issue of notice? Means if there is a collection like this, some extra collection we can say, collection in the name of GST which is not payable under the act. So if you have collected this amount from your customer, within what time can this be recovered from you? Is there any period of limitation like we saw period of limitation under 73 and 74? In 73 the limitation period is 3 years, in 74 it is 5 years. So is there any limitation in this section? No. Very important point to note. And no, because it is not mentioned in this section, it is missing. So that missing point is very important. There is no limitation on recovery in this section, means on show cause notice. There is no limitation on show cause notice. Show cause notice can be issued in this section anytime. Anytime means anytime, even after 10 years, even after 20 years, even after 45 years. If the government finds that you had collected some money from your customers in the name of GST and you have not paid it to the government, they can issue notice anytime. Anytime means anytime, even after 25 years. And then when the notice is issued, the order has to be passed within 1 year. So the assessment has to be completed within 1 year. But there is no limitation on issue of show cause notice. Okay. Then 7th point, means subsection 7. Where the issuance of order is stayed by an order of court or tribunal, the period of stay shall be excluded from computing this 1 year. That's fine. That's a normal thing. Then the proper officer in his order shall set out the relevant facts and the basis of his decision. That is, it should be a speaking order. The reasons behind the decision should be mentioned in the order itself. And the amount paid to the government under subsection 103 shall be adjusted against the tax payable, if any, by the person in relation to supplies referred to under subsection 1. So what it means is that if some tax was also due, then it will be adjusted towards tax. It will be adjusted towards tax payable if a liability arises. And what will happen to the excess amount? The excess amount, if any, will be refunded. Refunded to whom? The consumer, subject to provisions of unjust enrichment. So it will be refunded to the consumer from whom it was collected, and if the consumer cannot be found, the recipient cannot be found, then it will be deposited in the consumer welfare fund. So say for example, I'll tell you, if the duty means tax leviable, the actual tax leviable was say 10%. I have charged 16% from the customer, so 6% excess I have charged, and I have paid only 8% to the government. First I paid 8% only. So now what will happen? I have collected 16 and paid 8, so this difference that is lying with me, I have to pay to the government. Out of this difference that I will pay to the government, this is to be paid to government immediately, because I have collected it from the customer, so I have to pay it. So pay to government the balance of 8%. Out of this 8, 2% is the shortfall in payment of tax itself. See, tax leviable was 10, but you have paid 8. So there is a short payment of 2%. So this short payment will be adjusted out of this. So out of 8, 2% will be taken by government, adjusted against the tax payable. This is the liability. And the balance 6 is the excess amount. This excess amount will be refunded. Refunded to the customer who has borne the burden of tax, and if he cannot be found, it will go to consumer welfare fund. That is given there in subsection 10 then, that where any surplus is left, so this is that 6% surplus, after adjustment under 9, the amount of surplus shall either be credited to the fund or refunded to the person who has borne the incidence of such amount. Simple. And the person who has borne the incidence of the amount may apply for refund. The consumer can come and claim refund in accordance with section 54. We had seen section 54 in refund chapter. Okay, simple. Then rule 142 is there. Notice an order for demand of amounts payable under the act. Lot of sections are there where the payments are there, demands are made, like all the sections which are given in this rule, like 52 TCS, 73, 74 we just saw, 76, 122, 123, 124, 125, 127, 129, 130, lots of there. Basically you don't have to study this rule. What it does is it only gives the form numbers, DRC1, DRC2 and so on and so forth. So there is no need to study this rule, because it only gives the form numbers which are to be used for communication purposes, and anyways you don't have to remember the form numbers, and you cannot remember form numbers basically, so forget this rule. Then tax wrongfully collected and paid to the central or state government. Let's see, this is the contra provisions in all the laws. We had seen in IGST also, now it is in CGST also, that if you have collected some tax in the name of IGST, which is actually means you considered it to be interstate whereas it was intrastate, or you considered it to be intrastate but later on found to be interstate, so you have to pay IGST and then you can claim refund of CGST and SGST that you have paid. Or if you have paid IGST but later on it is found to be CGST, SGST payable, you have to pay CGST, SGST and you can claim refund of IGST. So that contra provision is there. So it says a registered person who has paid central tax and state tax. So you have paid CT plus ST or UT, and so that is given, or central tax and union territory tax on a transaction considered by him to be intrastate supply but which is subsequently held to be interstate, shall be refunded the amount of tax so paid. So this tax that you have paid will be refunded, provided you pay IGST. And subsection 2 says that a registered person who has paid IGST, integrated tax, on a transaction considered by him to be interstate but which is subsequently held to be intrastate, shall not be required to pay any interest. He will not have to pay any interest on the amount of central tax and state tax, as the case may be, or central tax and union territory tax, because there is a delay now. Originally you had paid IGST on time, but later on it is found that it is not IGST, you should have paid CT and ST. So you will then pay CT and ST, but there will be a delay. For this delay, interest will not be charged. There will be no interest, because it is not a case of non-payment of tax. It is a case of wrong payment of tax. You have paid the tax but with a wrong name. So therefore it's a matter of adjustment. So therefore no interest. Simple one. Then starts the recovery proceedings. Very interesting. 78, 79 will be very interesting. 78 says an amount payable by a taxable person in pursuance of an order passed under this act. So order can be 73, 74, 76. Shall be paid by such person within a period of 3 months from the date of service of the order, failing which recovery proceedings shall be initiated. Means you get 3 months time to pay the tax in the final order, 73, 74 or 76. Provided that where the proper officer considers it expedient in the interest of revenue, he may, for reasons recorded in writing, require the said taxable person to make such payment within such period less than a period of 3 months. Means the officer can reduce the period also if he thinks it is in the interest of revenue. Means like the company is getting dissolved, or the person is going to run away from this place, or he somehow thinks that giving 3 months is too much, then he can reduce the period also. So he can give you 1 month, he can give you 15 days, he can give you 2 months, right? So reduction can be done less than 3 months. So this is the simple section which says that after the order comes 73, 74, 76, you have to pay the amount within 3 months or the lesser time as allowed by the proper officer. Now let's see. If you don't pay within this time, then what will happen? Recovery of tax. So it says that where the amount payable by a person to the government under any provisions of the act or the rules made thereunder is not paid, the proper officer shall proceed to recover the amount by one or more of the following modes. One or more, underline. So it is not necessary that he should take only one route. There are various routes available. He can take one or more of them for recovery of tax. Okay. So this is also called as the coercive recovery procedure. Coercive means forceful recovery. Vasuli. Okay. So let's see. What are the different modes? Number 1, A. The officer may deduct. So first mode is deduction. Or may require any other specified officer to deduct the amount so payable from any money owing to such person which may be under control of the proper officer or such other officer. Means basically deduction from any refund which you have claimed and which is payable to you. So set off against refund. Write down. So there is some old outstanding dues and later on you file a refund claim in some other case. For some other matter you file a refund claim. So the amount is refundable to you and some amount was recoverable also from you. So what the officer will do? Set off the recovery against that refund. Simple. This is the simplest way. Number 2. The proper officer may recover or may require any other specified officer to recover the amount so payable by detaining and selling any goods. Underline, detaining and selling any goods belonging to such person which are under the control of the officer who is passing this order or the other officer. Other officer means the other department officers, like in some other state or maybe union territory or wherever it may be. Proper officer means one who is taking the action. Other officer means any other officer in India. Okay. So second point is detaining and selling goods. So write down detaining and selling, DNS, goods. Okay. Then below point number B, you write point number C. Okay. Now point number C has lot of sub clauses. So let's see this clause C having lot of sub clauses, but before we go to the sub clauses, you can correct the other ones also. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 sub clauses, and then this below that you will find clause C given, make it clause D. So this is clause D, then this is clause E, and the last one is clause F. Okay, so made all the corrections, then come back. So let's see what clause C says. So clause 1 says set off against any refund due. Clause B says that if any goods are in the possession of the officer, he can sell off those goods and recover the tax. Then C says proper officer may by notice in writing, just a second, require any other person like you, my student, from whom money is due or may become due to such person. So for example, if any student has to pay me some money, I have got my debtors. So write down debtors basically. So I have got my debtors and I have to pay tax to the government. So what the government can do is it can call upon my debtors, instead of giving money to Farooq Haq, give the money to the government. Simple. So they can recover money from my debtors. So who owes money to me or may become due, so they can be present debtors as well as future debtors, okay, to such person, or who holds or may subsequently hold money for or on account of such person, means where I have kept my deposits, means banks, institutions, where I have got money deposits and I am going to recover the money from there. So from debtors, then from deposits. Second point, to pay to the government. So they'll ask my debtors or they'll ask all the companies where I have got deposits to pay the amount to the government either forthwith. If the amount is presently due, then the government will say deposit forthwith, immediately. Forthwith upon the money becoming due or being held, or within the time specified in the notice, not being before the money becomes due or is held. So if I've got present debtors, government will write a letter to them, means proper officer will write a letter to them to deposit the money immediately or within 15 days, such time. Or if they are my future debtors, or I have got bank FDs which are going to mature in future, then the proper officer will write a letter to bank to deposit the money with the government as soon as the FDs mature, not before that. So much of money. Now how much money will be called? So much as is sufficient to pay the amount due from such person, or the whole of the money when it is equal to or less than that amount. So if the amount recoverable from Farooq Haq is say 20 lakh and my FD is 70 lakhs, So proper officer will write to the bank to deposit 20 lakhs out of that FD with the government. But if the FD is only 6 lakhs and the amount payable by Farooq is 20 lakhs, then proper officer will write to the bank to deposit the full amount of FD, the full maturity value with the government. Okay, very simple. Now what is your liability? What is your responsibility after you receive that notice? You are my debtor, you are my student. So if you have come to my office to pay the fees and you will find an officer sitting there, this is for imagination's sake, the officer will be sitting there at my door asking you, are you going to join Farooq classes? You will say yes, yes, yes. How much is your fees due? So you will say around 20,000. Come on, give the money to me. So the officer will collect the money immediately. And you have to pay him. If you don't pay him and you say that no, we are not joining Farooq classes, we have just come for the inquiry. Now you have come to join, but you are saving me. So you will come inside and tell me that, look sir, you come to CCD and we'll pay you the fees there. I will not pay you fees here. And the officer hears this. So now what will happen? That if you deny the order of the officer and you pay me the money separately, then you will become personally liable to pay to the government. So don't do that now. Anyways, you pay me fees and I have to pay the tax. So you pay tax on my behalf to the government. That's the same thing now. So pay him. Don't worry about me. Okay. So it says, every person to whom the notice is issued under subclause 1 shall be bound to comply. You are bound to comply with the notice. And in particular, where any such notice is issued to a post office, that is all the places where I have kept my deposits, banking company or insurer, even the insurance money that I am going to receive can be collected by the government. It shall not be necessary to produce any passbook, deposit receipt or policy or any other document for the purpose of any entry, endorsement or the like being made before payment is made. Normally under the Banking Regulations Act, what it says, that you give the fixed deposit receipt, endorsed, and then the government will, then the bank pays you. But in this case, if the notice is served, no such thing is required. No policy is required, no FD receipt is required, no passbook is required. Irrespective of that, the money becomes payable. Then, in case the person to whom the notice under 1 has been issued fails to make the payment in pursuance thereof to the government, you fail to make payment to the government, he shall be deemed to be a defaulter. You will be deemed to be defaulter in respect of the amount specified in the notice, and all the consequences of the act or rules made thereunder shall follow. Means now government will catch you and recover the amount from you because you are becoming a defaulter. Then the officer issuing notice may at any time amend or revoke such notice. Notice can be amended, notice can be revoked also, or extend the time for making payment in pursuance of the notice. Revocation amendment is required because if more money is recoverable, notice amount will be increased, or if the government recovers the money from some other place, then they will cancel your notice because they have already recovered my tax from somewhere else. So likewise, then any person making any payment in compliance with the notice issued under subclause shall be deemed to have made the payment under the authority of the person in default, and such payment being credited to the government shall be deemed to constitute a good and sufficient discharge of liability of such person. Means if you deposit the money with the government, it will be deemed that you have paid fees to me and your liability to pay fees to me is discharged. Simple. Then any person discharging any liability of the liability to the person in default after service on him of the notice shall be personally liable to the government to the extent of the liability discharged. Look, I told you now. So if you call me in CCD and you pay me the amount separately, you discharge your liability to me, then you will be deemed to be personally liable to pay that amount to the government again. So therefore don't do that. Okay, personal liability will arise on you. Then where a person on whom the notice is served under 1 proves to the satisfaction of the officer issuing the notice that the money demanded or any part thereof was not due. So you go and satisfy the officer that I have not purchased any glass from Farooq Haq. I had just come there for inquiry to his office. I have not purchased any goods. I have not purchased any services. I am not liable to pay him anything. Please cancel my notice. So you prove that the money is not due to the person in default, or that he did not hold any money for or on account of the person in default at the time of notice was served on him, nor the money demanded or any part thereof likely to become due. You are not liable to pay anything to Farooq Haq, and nor will any liability be arising in the future. Okay. Nothing contained in this section shall be deemed to require the person on whom the notice has been served to pay to the government. Then you are not liable to pay anything to the government. Simple. Okay. So this is the third point. C point, recovery from debtors and people with whom I have got deposits and the money is receivable from them. Okay. Then fourth point, D. The proper officer may, in accordance with the rules to be made in this behalf, distrain any movable or immovable property. Distrain means put a distraint order. Distraint order means it is like a stay order that you are not allowed to sell, dispose of your assets. The ownership gets transferred to the government. So that is called as a distraint order. It's like seizure. So distraint and sale of movable and immovable property. So you can write down also sale of movable and immovable property. So now government will take custody of my movable immovable assets and sell them by auction or by tender or otherwise and recover the amount. So it says distrain movable and immovable property belonging to or under the control of such person and detain the same. Now first they will detain it until the amount payable is paid. So they will not sell it immediately, they will detain it. They will give me a notice of at least 30 days that look, we have detained your property. So if you pay up the amount of tax and interest and penalty, then we will release the property to you. And if you don't, then we will be obliged to sell. So it says until the amount is paid. And in case any part of the said amount payable or the cost of distress, including cost of distress, or keeping the property remains unpaid for a period of 30 days. So 30 days notice is given. And if it remains payable even after 30 days, after such distress may cause the said property to be sold, and with the proceeds of such sale may satisfy the amount payable. Amount payable means the tax, interest, penalty, and the costs including cost of sale remaining unpaid, and shall render the surplus amount, if any, to such person. So out of the money collected on sale of my movable and immovable property, first the taxes will be recovered, then the cost of holding the property for so many days. Suppose they have kept it in a bank locker or somewhere in a locker and the locker rent is to be paid, that will also be recovered. Plus any security is provided over the property, that security cost will be recovered. So all the costs which are incurred by the department in holding the property, in taking custody, in holding it, and in selling it. So they have given advertisements in newspaper for the sale of the property, then they have appointed an auctioneer, so his commission is paid, and so on and so forth. All the expenses which are incurred will also be recovered. And then if any surplus remains, it will be handed over to the assessee. Then fifth one, E point. The proper officer may prepare a certificate signed by him specifying the amount due from such person and send it to collector of the district in which such person owns any property or resides or carries on business, or to any other officer authorized by the government, and the said collector or the officer on receipt of the certificate shall proceed to recover from such person the amount specified thereunder as if it were arrears of land revenue. So it can also be recovered from us as land revenue. So write down as land revenue. So if you own properties, you have to pay land revenue on them. To whom? The collector. So here it will be deemed that this dues is also a part of your land revenue dues. So the collector will come to your place and recover the amount. And if you don't pay, then he has the right to sell your property to recover it. And lastly, the proper notwithstanding anything contained in the Code of Criminal Procedure, the proper officer may file an application to appropriate magistrate, and such magistrate shall proceed to recover from such person the amount specified thereunder as if it were a fine imposed by him. So it can also be recovered as fine imposed by magistrate. So then magistrate has various powers of recovery. So he will exercise the powers and recover the amount. And after recovery, it will be paid to the GST department. So many types of recoveries are there. Very good. Then subsection 2 says that where the terms of any bond or any instrument executed under this act, like letter of undertaking, or any rule or regulation may thereunder provide that any amount due under such instrument may be recovered in the manner laid down in subsection 1. The amount may, without prejudice to the other modes of recovery, be recovered in accordance with provisions of that subsection. Bond, letter of undertaking, and all these things are also there now. So if we have filed these things, then they can also be exercised to recover the amount. And it will be without prejudice to these recoveries. Means these recoveries, 6 types of recoveries will be there, plus the bond LUT will also be there. Then where any amount of tax, interest, penalties payable by a person to the government under the provisions of this act or rules may thereunder and which remains unpaid, proper officer of state tax or union territory tax during the course of recovery of the said tax arrears may recover the amount from the said person as if it were arrears of state tax or union territory tax and paid to the government. Means, see, when your CT is due, your ST might also be due. So if the state government officers have already sold your properties or your goods and trying to recover your state tax, they will also take care to recover your central tax dues and then pay it to the central government. Good. And where the amount recovered under subsection 3 is less than the amount due to the central government and state government, the amount to be credited to the account of respective government shall be in proportion to the amount due to each such government. Now this is an interesting one. If the state government is recovering dues from you, and if say their dues was 10,000 and central dues were also 10,000, so total recovery to be made was 20,000. But if the amount recovered is only 15,000, then what the state government will do? They will keep 10 and hand over 5 to the central? No. It will be divided in the same proportion. It will be divided in the proportion of their respective recoveries. So if recovery was 10 plus 10, 20, then 15,000 will be divided as 7,500 and 7,500. Great. And at the last there is an explanation which says that for the purpose of this section, the word person shall include distinct persons as referred to in subsection 4 or 5 of section 25. Means FHC Nagpur office and FHC Delhi office will be considered as persons. So FHC Nagpur is a different person, FHC Delhi is a different person. Simple. Then we have a lot of rules giving the procedures for all the modes of recoveries that we just saw in the section, and these are, I would give you as homework. Just read once, because the detailed procedure is not covered in the examination, is not in your course, but if you want to just read it once, you can go to it. Like how the notices are sent for recovery to third persons, then how the movable immovable property are sold, what is the mode of sale, and all these things, how the public auction will be undertaken. So they are detailed procedures Just go through it once, all these rules. Attachment, disposals, right up to 161. Just go through it once if you have time. If you don't have time, skip. Then come to section 80. Payment of tax and other amounts in installments. On application filed by the taxable person, the commissioner may, for reasons to be recorded in writing, extend the time for payment or allow payment on installments of any amount due under the Act other than the amount due as per the liability self-assessed in any return by such person in monthly installments not exceeding 24. But self-assessed liability which we show in the return has to be paid in full. No installments can be allowed there, but installments can be allowed in case of assessed liability, that is as per the orders 73, 74. Subject to payment of interest. Interest has to be paid if you are allowed to pay in installments under section 50, that is 18% per annum. And provided that where there is a default in payment of any one installment on its due date, the whole outstanding balance will become payable immediately. Means the installment system will be closed down if you make default in any one of the installments. Then transfer of property to be void in certain cases, where a person after any amount has become due, from him. See, what the section says basically is that if any amount becomes due, an order has been passed against you and you don't want to pay that order, what you will do is you will gift away your assets to your relatives, and then you will stand and say that I don't have money to pay the dues. That should not happen. Hence this section says that after the amount has become due, you create a charge, you give a charge to somebody, first charge, second charge, or parts with the property, you gift away the property belonging to him or in his possession by way of sale, mortgage, exchange, or any other mode of transfer whatsoever of any of the properties in favor of any other person, with the intention of defrauding the government revenue. This is the intention. Your intent is to defraud. Now, if you make a full sale at full consideration, then is your intention to defraud the government? No. The property will be replaced by money. I had a property worth 75 lakhs. Now I have money 75 lakhs to pay the taxes. So that is not a defrauding thing. But when you gift away the asset or you sell property at a very low price, you sell off property worth 80 lakhs to your relative for 10 lakhs, or to your friend, to your boss, to your colleagues, to your servants and all, in order to defraud the government, then it has a problem. Then such charge or transfer shall be void. It will be declared to be void as against any claim in respect of any tax or other sum payable by the said person. As against the claim for tax means the government has still got the right to recover the tax from those properties, provided that such charge or transfer shall not be void if it is made for adequate consideration. See, it is given. If it is made for full consideration, adequate consideration, then it will not be void, because property will be replaced with money. In good faith and without notice of the pendency of such proceeding under the Act, or without notice of such tax or sum payable by the said person, or with the previous permission of the officer. If you take permission of the officer and then sell a property, then it's fine, then no problem. Otherwise the transfers will be declared to be void. Then tax to be first charge on property. Whatever properties you have got, the tax dues will be considered as the first charge. So this section you will find in all the taxation laws. Notwithstanding anything contrary contained in any law for the time in force, save as otherwise provided in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016. So Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code will override this section, right? Because it is given save as otherwise provided. Save as otherwise provided means whatever is provided in Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code will override this section. Any amount payable by a taxable person or any other person on account of tax, interest or penalty which he is liable to pay to the government shall be the first charge on the property of that person. So apart from Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, you follow that law first, and thereafter the taxes will be the first charge. Then provisional attachment to protect revenue. All these are simple sections. 2 marks, the short note can come, just theory question. Provisional attachment means during the course of the proceedings, when the proceeding is going on, we don't know how much tax you are liable to pay, it has not yet been determined, but in the course of the proceeding, the officer can pass an order of provisional attachment, means stopping you from selling off your properties, okay, till the time the case is settled and the amount is recovered. So that is called as provisional attachment. So it says that during the pendency of the proceeding under section 62, 63, 64, 67, 73, 74, the commissioner is of the opinion that for the purpose of protecting the interest of the revenue, it is necessary so to do. He may by order in writing attach provisionally any property including bank accounts belonging to taxable person in such manner as may be prescribed. So there are rules also which are given below, but again the rules are not to be read in this chapter. Every such provisional attachment shall cease to have effect after the expiry of a period of 1 year from the date of the order. Means this attachment can be done for a maximum 1 year period. So during that 1 year the government can assess the liability and recover the same. And then the whole procedure is given. If you want, you can read it again, as I told you, not compulsory. Then continuation and validation of certain recovery proceedings, section 84. This is also not much relevant. If you want, you can read, otherwise you can forget it. So that's it. Just read it once if you want. So that was the chapter of demand and recoveries. Interesting chapter. Marks again, as I'm telling you, after each chapter will be in the range of 3 to 6 on this chapter. So 1 question or maybe 2 questions of 3 marks each that can come.